Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to take a look at the dead zones for the outfit. So starting with the camera, we have about a 23% circular dead zone. 23% is a very common dead zone size, but it is large. So you can see I can make a decent amount of stick movement without anything occurring in game. And there is quite a bit of restricted diagonal movement around the axes. So if you're anywhere within these blue regions, you're moving, in this case, perfectly left. In this case, perfectly up. In this case, perfectly right. In this case, perfectly down. It isn't until you break into these green regions where you start seeing diagonal movement occur. It's a little less clear since the clouds are moving, but now what's really interesting is this does not function cleanly. So it's not like you move into this arm and you're moving perfectly left, and then you move into this arm and you're moving perfectly up. As you can see, that if I do that, I'm still moving left. Whereas if I move into this from the dead zone, I'm moving perfectly up. So that transition, and of course that applies here too. So if I move starting with up and then move to the left, I'm still moving up. What does happen is if I start with left and then move into this region and then move past the horizontal axis, you can see that it flips the direction I'm moving in. So that horizontal position is sort of preserved. So my stick is on the right side of the stick movement, and the cursor is moving to the right. Now if you move past this dotted line, you actually seem to get full diagonal movement. So you can see that it's moving at an angle upward. And I'll move here to use this as a reference point. So if I look up fully, you can see that right around the axis now, full diagonal movement is being present. Of course, there's no vertical movement since I'm capping the view like that in this region, so you can see that it's moving upwards. But if I move back under this, then it goes back to just being perfectly horizontal movement. And of course, if I move vertically and then move horizontally, you can see that the camera's still moving vertically, but if I pass the vertical axis down, it's moving that way. And if I move over here, you can see that the same thing applies just horizontally. So you can get diagonal movement within these regions, but you have to sort of go on the opposite axis from the ones you want. So if I wanted diagonal movement when moving horizontally, I'd have to move up and then move over here, then I have diagonal movement. So this is a really strange implementation, and I'm not sure why it's set up this way. But moving on to the acceleration, this shaded region over here represents an acceleration jump. And the acceleration is split up between horizontal and vertical acceleration. They apply separately, so the vertical acceleration is only visible before the view caps. I'll get back to the separated nature of it, but the acceleration curve you can see is basically a linear curve before this jump, and then this jump is a huge increase. It's just short of 15 times, and then the acceleration seems to cap off from here on. Now the issue with having the axis accelerate separately, so this horizontal threshold only accelerates the horizontal axis, and this vertical threshold only accelerates the vertical axis, and this affects diagonal movement. So you have a specific angle, and changing the vertical and horizontal speeds changes the angle and puts a bias on that angle. So if you accelerate the horizontal, you're going to have a more horizontally biased angle, and if you accelerate the vertical movement, you'll have a more vertically biased angle. So to try to demonstrate that, you can see that I'm moving at this specific angle right here. Just trying to let you show that. But if I move into this acceleration region, keeping the same general angle, you can see that I'm still moving vertically the same rate, but horizontally is much faster. So this is a much flatter angle than it was. And this may be more obvious vertically, where you can see if I move the stick right here, you can see that it's moving at a bit steeper of an angle. I'm moving at a little over 45 degrees. But if I move into this acceleration region, it's almost vertical. So to try to demonstrate it again, the only times where both axes are accelerating at the same time are within these small slivers where there's overlap. So both axes are accelerating the same, so your diagonal movement actually isn't affected. So there's quite a few things that work against the camera controls in this game. What is kind of interesting is the diagonal restriction is very similar to Skyrim Special Edition. So yeah, it's interesting they share that in common. However, Skyrim's is much more predictable, where if you move from this left restricted block into this up restricted block, you just start moving perfectly upward. So Skyrim's is a lot more predictable that way. As far as movement is about 45%, perfectly circular dead zone. And we have no restricted diagonal movement, so I can bob right around this axis, and you see the character is registering properly. And I can trace right around the dead zone, and you can see that you have nice smooth transition in your diagonal movement. And the shaded region represents the run threshold. Now there is a specific sprint button in this game, and there's no threshold for that. It's just a modifier for walking and running. So you can see is your normal walk movement when sprinting, and then when you're running, and then when you're sprinting. So the movement controls are great. The dead zone is very large, but you do have a wide range of walk movement. This is all the same speed. So it's still very easy to walk if you want to, and run if you want to, just push the stick fully. So the large dead zone is pretty mitigated from that. But you have full diagonal movement, so that's much better than the camera. Really, the camera could have benefited from this, just having full diagonal movement and having a consistent acceleration threshold, one that accelerated both axes at the same time would have gone a long way into fixing it. Of course, there's a separation between the very low general camera sensitivity and the very high accelerated sensitivity, but having full diagonal movement and consistent acceleration on both axes would have been a huge improvement. But that about covers it. So thanks for watching, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.